Hey all, how's it going? My name is Blair Cinta. I have a Patreon site called Sticks and Wires where I teach drum recording. My process here is always to find a sound that I like and then dissect it to get as close as I can as possible. Since I run a home studio, I'm always trying to improve my knowledge, so when people send me references, I can get as close to those references as possible. And also this helps in my creativity of being able to get my own sounds. Doing these emulations helps me train my ears for what drums to use, what cymbals to use, how to mic things, and then of course on the back end, improving my EQing, compression, gating, whatever skills are needed to help get great mixes of drums to send off to people. So if you dig this stuff, check out the link below and go check it out. There's a bunch of free posts on Patreon, and if you like it, you can sign up there. It's really reasonable prices. There's probably over 50 lessons up there already. It's always growing every week. Okay, so let me take you through what I found I needed for this track, which was surprisingly few mics. The sound seems very roomy. That seems like the real basis of the sound, and then blending in, the kind of kick, snare, and toms and hat seemed to be the real trick. And man, I've tweaked and tweaked on EQ with this to get this kind of weird boxy room sound as close as I could. So first we have a room sound that's just like this. It's not too big, and again it seems kind of boxy. Okay, kick in, give you a little bit of that. Snare top. Okay, kind of a fat snare, and you'll notice the volume is quite low, because that's where it seemed like it was in the mix. I'll give you some hi-hat here. Not exciting. All right, toms. Okay, so it seems to me like I could not match these rack tom sounds at all. They seem to me like maybe that's kind of like a 10-inch power tom or maybe a 12-inch power tom, and I don't have any toms that make that tone that's getting. I got close to the tuning, but that was one thing that I knew immediately listening to it that was not going to happen. So let's go back to the rooms here, and what I did was I took a lot of this low end out and just tried to match this as close as I could with this curve bender EQ. So I'll start with the rooms off, and then I'll turn it on just so you can hear the EQ here, the EQ change. Okay, so you can see I'm doing all sorts of weird stuff here. I'm really pushing this 300 plus 2 dB here. I'm boosting 800 by 3.5. I'm boosting the 6.5K for the top end, and I'm just cutting a little bit of this 10K off the top. Pretty weird, but I'm just trying to match that boxy sound. So the room itself right now does not sound like that, but with this all blended together, this is where I ended up. Okay, next, the kick. I will start with the EQ off and turn it on. Again, not normally something I would, when you're listening to it on it by itself soloed, not something I would normally do. We're at about 150 hertz here, and I'm boosting that by 5.5 dB, and I'm just cutting a little 395 here. Again, pretty odd. It's all really about the sum of the whole here. Okay, snare. Let's give you the snare. I'm going to repeat myself a lot here. Adding a lot of 175, 12 dB, cutting a little bit. No, I'm not cutting any there. Adding a little bit of 3K here, and then compressing it a bit. Sum of the whole, okay? Here we go. And you'll notice that this is down -17. So, like I said, this is just adding a certain part to the mix, but when we listen to the original, the kick is quite loud in the original, blended in with the room, and the snare is kind of far back. The toms, I didn't do anything to them on the individual channels here, and those are also quite loud in this room mix. So I'm busing all these to this drum bus right here. I have a tape simulation on, which I'm just boosting a little. And let's start with the SSL here, because this is one of the most important things. So again, all sorts of crazy EQ. Here it is without the EQ and without the gating. So all the drums bust to, this mix of drums bust to the channel without any gating or EQ on. Okay, so you can hear it's a little more boxy with this mix. Let me turn the EQ on first. Here we go. Pretty drastic. It's changing it a lot more high end, less low end. Some of that boxiness actually disappears, but that's going to be added back by the reverbs that we're adding. Okay, let's put the dynamics in. I actually ended up using an expander here. It's, you know, the range is very high here. Threshold is very high. The release, you know, I timed it to the recording as much as I could. I'm pushing the input here a bit. I have some compression on it here. 3-to-1 ratio at -10, and again the release time here kind of helps with the gating and the release of the timing in the track. So here it is with the dynamics in. Okay, so you'll notice that we're starting to get that cutoff, that abrupt cutoff that happens in this track, which is obviously the gate reacting. And you also notice that the crash cymbal starts to do strange things where the gate is opening and closing. And if you listen closely, that's happening in the actual track. But it's not as distracting in there because there are other instrumentation happening at that point. Okay, now let's go to the reverb. So I use this Lexicon 224, which I would imagine by 1984-85, when they were doing this, was probably not the one used. But there's this setting in this lexicon where it adds chorus, which I'm hearing in the original, and I just messed with these as much as I could, these settings as much as I could, where my ears told me it was close. So as you can see, the mid is cranked here. The bass is down. There is some crossover here. The treble is all the way up. The depth is all the way up, and that helps add this kind of funky mid-room thing that's going on in the track. And a bit of pre-delay here to add some length, but it shouldn't sound like a delay. The other thing I'm doing up here is I'm cranking this input here, so I'm hearing more of the effect. And this pitch shift is all the way, or the shift I should say, is all the way up. This makes the reverb more dense, and I'll give you a little example of that. So I'm going to start the track with the gate on, and then I will turn on the reverb and you'll hear the whole thing change. Okay, so let me give you a little example of this pitch shift. I'm going to turn this down while the track is playing and then turn it back up, and you'll notice it is subtle, but the density of it definitely changes. It's kind of interesting. So, like I said, it's subtle. I'll change a few of these other settings as it's playing just so you can hear what they're doing. Okay, so that gives you the idea of what the reverb unit is doing, which is quite a lot. EQ wise, length of the reverb, length of and it's working in conjunction with the gates. Okay, so next, I heard a little more chorus in there. Which I'm guessing comes from this nonlinear reverb, whatever it was that they used. But I wanted to try to get a little more of that. So I pulled out the Sound Toys effects rack and I put on this microshift, which I believe emulates an eventide. So again, this is subtle. I'll start with it off and turn it on. Okay, so it's debatable kind of where that sits. Every time I do these things, if I walk away for 5 minutes, I come back and I hear something else that I want to change. This one was definitely driving me nuts because it's really close to get to whatever's happening on this EQ. Okay, the last thing I did is I added some decapitator here before the reverb, before the microshift and before the SSL, and I just felt like this was adding. I feel like there's some almost like white noise in there in this track that was happening that I was also trying to emulate. So I'll turn that off and I'll turn it on. Okay, so I just have this on the EMI setting. You can see that I'm literally just turning it on. This is not up at all. But again, it's bringing out this certain frequency in the mid range that I was searching for a long time. So that's really it. This is about as close as I get. This is obviously played by Tony Thompson, incredible drummer for Chic and then Powerstation. And man, it's a super cool part. It's a super cool sound. Definitely pinnacle of 1985 gated reverb. And that's it. Okay. Hope you dug it. Please check out Sticks and Wires if you do. There's a ton of lessons up there. And see you next time.